evening, taking the time to learn a little bit about McDowell County's history. I am Candace Workman. I am on the McDowell County 250 committee. If you don't know, next year is America's 250th birthday. So we have this speaker series lined up, and we are doing one each month, every first Thursday here at the Marion Depot, with a few exceptions for maybe some future speakers. The North Carolina Department of Cultural and Natural Resources have sponsored the two themes for the America 250 initiative in North Carolina. The first theme is Revolutionary North Carolina, and the second one is When Are We Us? Revolutionary North Carolina discusses our foundation as a nation and as a state and those who made it possible, while the When Are We Us theme discusses the history and progress we have made and those who have helped along the way. Our speaker series is every first Thursday, so if you would like to stay updated with that, we have a mailing list that you are welcome to sign up to before you leave if you have not already. And we also have a Facebook page that we are trying to get more active to get the events out. Our speaker tonight is Brooke Burney, the treasurer and event planner for the NC Gold Foundation. The NC Gold Foundation was founded by Elizabeth McCormick, Richard Buchanan, and the late Don Markham in 2004. Its mission is to promote history and educate folks on the role of gold in NC history. Brooke does an amazing job at organizing and hosting the NC Gold Festival at the Lucky Strike every June, where you can view gold history in person by looking at one of the mine shafts yourself. We have a rich gold history here in McDowell, which Brooke will be sharing with us tonight, so please welcome Brooke.
Thank you guys for having me. Like you said, I'm Brooke Burney. I'm from the North Carolina Gold Foundation. Again, we were founded in 2004. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We are dedicated to preserving and educating about the rich gold heritage of North Carolina. So in addition to some breathtaking views, what is North Carolina known for? We have the Biltmore Estate, which is still the only privately owned estate in the U.S. We have the best barbecue. Lucky Strike, boys especially, know how to make the barbecue, and Susie Q sitting over there knows how to make the sauce. Krispy Kreme came from North Carolina, so did Pepsi Cheerwine. But before we were first in flight, what were we first in? Gold. So, in 1799, in Cabarrus County, 12-year-old Conrad Reed decided to skip Sunday school and go fishing in Little Meadow Creek on his family's farm. While fishing, he saw this very big, beautiful rock, but had no idea what it was. He took it home, asked his dad, John. John had no idea what it was. So this very big, beautiful rock sat on their front porch, yes, as a doorstop for 3 years. So in 1802, the Reed family was loading up their wagon to go get some supplies in Fayetteville. At the very last minute, they tossed this rock in the back of their wagon. While in Fayetteville, a jeweler said, "Why, that's a 17-pound gold nugget you have right there, John." John didn't know, and he also did not know what the value was. So he was going to sell it to get some more supplies for his family. The jeweler said, "Name your price, John." $3.50 seemed fair to him at the time, because that was enough back then to get a whole week's worth of supplies for his family. So, not entirely sure if the jeweler just felt a little guilty or if John had to pursue legal action, but the jeweler made it right and gave him the actual value of $3,600 in that day's time. So that sparked the very first American gold rush on the Reed family farm. People from all over the community would come on the weekends or in the colder months whenever the planting and harvesting season was over. So they would come to the Reed family farm, and at first they would just get in the creek, and you could just pick the gold nuggets up out of the creek. Once they kind of got all of that gold off just the top of the ground, they started digging. This was one of the first mine shafts that you can still view there today at the Reed. It's now the Reed Gold Mine. North Carolina bought it from the Reed family and everyone else that had it after that. So this is the very first gold mine. You can go down into that mine. I did not. So from 1804 to 1810, North Carolina produced all of the gold in the United States and became known as the Golden State during 1804 to 1827, and then later California took that title. In 1828 to 1848, $60 million worth of gold was mined in North Carolina. So the gold rush moved across the state, coming to McDowell County in the late 1820s to early 1830s. Sam Martin had been gold mining in South America. He got on a ship, came across the Gulf of Mexico, and got out in Alabama, and began walking to his destination of Connecticut. When he was in the Dyersville area, the back of Pilot Mountain, his shoe broke. Obviously, you can't keep walking if your shoe breaks. So he happened to notice on the tree there was a sign for a cobbler. He goes to the cobbler, Bob Anderson, and Bob and his wife invited Sam Martin to stay the night. Sam was looking at the logs in Bob's cabin and noticed the mud looked very similar to what he had been mining in South America. So he asked Bob, "Where did you get this mud that's in between your logs?" And Bob said, "Well, it's just right in the creek right there, on the Anderson property." He said, "Well, let's do a test. This looks like what I have been mining." So they mined and they found gold. So they made a deal. Sam would teach Bob how to pan for gold. Sam would give him a place to stay, and they would split the profits fairly. So for 6 months, they had their operation. Unfortunately, at the end of 6 months, when Sam decided to continue on his journey, we have no record of where he and his vast wealth went. We do not know if he made it to his destination, or if he got stopped along the way, or if he ever even left. We do not know. Bob Anderson and his family, classic tale of you get rich very quickly, you lose it just as quickly. However, that allowed the gold rush to enter into what we consider as Western North Carolina. This is the South Mountain Gold Belt. We have a mine that you can still view today right in this area. The NC Gold Foundation has this property, and I will be talking a little bit about that in just a minute. So you can see all of the gold mines that were relatively close to this area. There was a German man named Christopher Beckler. He came over to America, and I believe he was in Pennsylvania, when he heard about all of the gold that was being pulled out of North Carolina. So he traveled down to Rutherford County and built a mint. This mint minted the very first $1 gold coin 17 years before the U.S. mint did. And I have one of the Beckler coins that you guys can view after the presentation. So the gold that was being pulled out of Vane Mountain, the Dyersville area, may have been in the very first $1 gold coin, because all of the gold that was being pulled out of there, they had to be minting gold from somewhere. We don't have a record of that, of exactly what gold had been mined that went into the very first $1 gold coin, but there is a chance. The U.S. government did not want a private citizen or a civilian being the only ones minting. So all of the rest of the gold from North Carolina was being sent up to the U.S. Mint in Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, some unsavory people decided that they could get rich quick without having to work for it. So they were robbing the stagecoaches that were carrying the gold. The U.S. government built the Charlotte Mint in the 1830s, and today Charlotte is now the second largest financial hub behind New York City. So this is important. We all know about the California Gold Rush. That is in our history books, and that is important because it expanded America from just our 13 colonies. You know, we ended up with our 48 continental states and then Alaska and Hawaii after that. But the very foundation of this nation's currency came from right here. Came from North Carolina, came from McDowell County. Without that, without North Carolina's gold rush, California's gold rush may have happened much later. And so it really did begin here. There are a few different ways of mining gold. And some of these ways they used back then, and we are still using them today. So very basic is panning. And as you can see, that's people of all ages. There's a process called high banking. And one of the newer ways of mining is dredging and sluicing. A dredge is sort of like a vacuum cleaner that you put in the water, and it sucks up the dirt and the rocks and the gold, and then, as you can hopefully see, it spits it out right here, and it will hold it, then you can pick out your gold nuggets. So this picture might be a little bit blurry, but I have a vial of gold for you guys to view at the end of this presentation. But this vial and this vial came from McDowell County. Here's a picture of mercury on gold. They would use mercury adheres to gold, and so that way when everything's washing out, the mercury holds on to the gold so that you don't lose it. And gold, so in 1824, the U.S. government performed the very first geological survey for mineral purposes. Up until that point, it had only been performed for agricultural purposes. So about 20 minutes from Gold Hill is the Reed family farm. So George in Gold Hill in 1824 noticed on that survey that he had gold on his property. It follows the quartz veins. So here's a picture of gold on quartz, and I also have a piece of gold on quartz that was found on North Carolina Gold Foundation. You can do that as well. Gold mining in North Carolina and in general began tapering off when the California Gold Rush news made it to the East Coast, and then it completely stopped when the Civil War or war between the states started. Gold mining started again in western North Carolina, specifically Vane Mountain, in 1905. Most of the placer gold or surface gold had been mined already, and so gold mining in western North Carolina only lasted a couple of years after that. While North Carolina has a massive amount of gold still, the problem is that it would take an immense amount of money, time, and manpower, and it would absolutely destroy the land to recover that gold. Did anybody know any of this? Yes?
A little.
Yeah. What did you know already?
The time periods, and about the breed lines, and I knew where the lines kind of generally were.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I know one of the members that stays at the Lucky Strike. He went to the Reed gold mine on a field trip when he was 11 years old. Grew up, went off to the military, retired from the military, came home, and he remembered that field trip. you know, and that's why things like this are so important, because you know, we're gonna lose this information if we don't have things like this and reminding people, you know. Because even in our own county, most people don't know. In our own state, most people don't know. It wasn't in my history book whenever I was in school, you know. So, Richard Buchanan, Liz McCormick, and the late Don Markham sat on a picnic table January 12th, 2004, and formed the North Carolina Gold Foundation. They wanted to make sure that our very rich gold history did not go anywhere. In 2004 was the very first annual North Carolina Gold Festival. At the festival, which we just had our 21st annual North Carolina Gold Festival this year in June, you can find gold mining demonstrations and equipment dealers and gold mining clubs like the GPAA. The best food ever. We have the best festival food vendors. Matt's Munchies is a local, as is Taste of Philly Flavor. We have incredibly talented artists, and free bouncy houses for the kids. We also try to have a face painter every year. So in 2014, Doug McCormick and Richard Buchanan were very instrumental in getting 12 acres of land donated to the North Carolina Gold Foundation. Doug McCormick is pictured here with his wife, and Doug is pictured here with his assistant team. They have worked very hard over the last couple of years to make the land somewhere that you want to go, and make that land what it deserves. So here's the entrance. It's right off of Holly Spout Road. To the left of this trailhead kiosk is a little trail leading to a mine shaft. So in that area where the 12 acres are, there are 4 known mine shafts of the Nichols vein. Of those 4, the North Carolina Gold Foundation has 2. Of those 2, only one is accessible. It is the deepest of the 4 mine shafts at 117 feet deep originally. As this mine shaft is quite old now, it is no longer 117 feet deep, and it is not safe to enter. Doug and his assistant Tim gave the mine shaft a beautiful facelift in August of 2024, and it is a historically accurate facelift. So you go to this mine shaft, this is what it would have looked like back then. Behind this is a hill. So inside this mine shaft, the miners would go in with donkeys. And there's a legend that says that they were blind donkeys because they would not fight about going inside of a mine. So the miners would use pickaxes and put the material into an open belly ore cart. They would pull this, the donkeys would pull the ore carts out of the mine shaft, and then they would take it above this hill and send it through a hopper behind what is known as a tin stamp mill. The hopper would send this down, and these tin stamps right here would come down very hard. They're very heavy. I think they're 50 pounds a piece, 500 pounds a piece. I'm sorry, 500 pounds each, and so they would crush the quartz to get the gold. They would do like this. Crush the quartz to get the gold out of it. This is also at the Reed family farm, or Reed gold mine, I'm sorry. So these tables right here, on them are called amalgam plates, and amalgam plates are mercury-coated copper plates. So as I said before, the mercury adheres to the gold. So they are the material is sent down onto these plates, and the mercury coating adheres to the gold, and the water continues rushing the rocks and the sand off. So at intervals, could be at the end of the shift, not really sure, they would scrape these amalgam plates and run that material through a retort. And a retort would heat the mercury to its boiling point so that it would release the gold, and then mercury would go through a cooling tube so that they could reuse it. And then the gold would be able to be processed for, some of the gold went to be made into coins, some of it went to be made into jewelry. And then some of it, I'm sure, made its way into some documents. So as you can see, with this photo, this is what is left of the Mecklenburg Ironworks tin stamp mill from the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. It is on the North Carolina Gold Foundation property. You can get to it relatively easily. It's a small, very small incline. And we are trying, the North Carolina Gold Foundation is trying to raise money to rebuild this stamp mill. Just to start the project is $50,000. We are hoping that we have a stamp mill at some point that we can purchase, but we are just not there yet because $50,000 is quite a bit. Also on the North Carolina Gold Foundation, we have the Miners Meadow Nature Park, Barefoot Baby Clothing and Foundation, just right here, helped us design our park, and they gave us they donated 4 picnic tables so that families or anyone could come and enjoy our park, enjoy the peacefulness of the nature, let their kids play in the nature setting, and just enjoy being outdoors. We have a stage, a sandbox for the kids to play, a stunt jump that is enjoyed by people of all ages. That's my daughter, and that's my aunt. So, like I said, this gold history is really not in our textbooks, and that is also a massive project to undertake to get this really, really good history added to our textbooks. So, in the meantime, the North Carolina Gold Foundation decided that we could do a little bit more, and so we started the North Carolina Gold Heritage Journal. The first issue was an interview with Liz McCormick and Richard Buchanan about how it got started. The second issue, or this issue, we visited the Reed Gold Mine and got to hear the history for ourselves. And then the very next issue was Gold Hill. Vivian Hopkins is a wealth of knowledge at Gold Hill, so you definitely are not going to get disappointed if you schedule an interview or schedule a visit with Larry at the Reed Gold Mine or Vivian at Gold Hill. I highly recommend both. And then our fourth issue is about the South Mountain Belt. This tells the story of Sam Martin and how he brought the gold rush to western North Carolina. You can sign up to receive that to your email through our website, which is right here. We also have a Facebook page, an Instagram page, and of course we have an email. So, do you guys have any questions? Yes.
Where is the Gold Festival and where is Vane Mountain?
Okay. Do you know 221 heading down to Rutherford County?
221 going where?
221 south, going south out of Marion, and then going like almost into Rutherford County.
Okay.
Okay, that's where the Lucky Strike is, and the Lucky Strike is the NC Gold Foundation's venue. The Gold Festival actually started, when it was started in 2004, it started at Tom Johnson's, then Camping World, but Tom Johnson's. And then Old Fort was gracious enough to host us from 2011 to 2017, and then the dream the founders had always had to bring it home to Vane Mountain was realized in 2018. And so the Lucky Strike has hosted the Gold Festival since then, and we can do tours just across the road at our North Carolina Gold Foundation land during the festival. You can also schedule a tour with me and see this history yourself, just by going to the website or, on the website is my number, and we can do that Monday through Friday.
When is the festival?
It is the very first weekend in June every year. So, the 2026 festival will be June 5th and June 6th. Yes.
I assume that there are still a lot of gold bugs down around the Lucky Strike mine area, isn't that right? Seems like I was down there once with Richard, and there were people actively looking for gold, right?
Yes.
Scanning?
Yes.
Well, with the price of gold hitting records every day right now, aren't they getting excited? Is there more activity? Are there people talking about how gold mining that was not that practical because of the cost, right, of extraction? Do you hear people now saying that because gold is getting so valuable that maybe some mines would be viable down there?
That's a really good question. I know that, okay, so the Lucky Strike, as an example, and I'm using the Lucky Strike because that's my family. There are a few other gold mines, but I'm going to speak specifically about the Lucky Strike. The Second Broad River runs through that area, and the Nichols vein, which is the mine shaft that we got to view, is one of the four of that vein. That vein runs underneath that creek and goes to the Lucky Strike's property. The Lucky Strike is one of the only properties that had not been mined before because a farmer owned that land, and of course he didn't want to give up his crops. So, the Lucky Strike specifically has the equipment they have a crane that digs down and gets the material closer to the bedrock where it is. To make the operation financially successful, it would take an Alaska level mine. Does anyone watch Gold Rush? Okay. It would take that big, and it would also absolutely destroy our land. And now, a lot of that property is either owned by us, the citizens, or it is owned by North Carolina, and you cannot mine on North Carolina land. So, and then you have to ask permission to go on someone's private property. Yes.
My question was, I guess I'm oversimplifying, but everything I've read about gold, they were panning the creek until they didn't find gold anymore, then they find mother lode where it broke off in the creek. Where's the mother lode down there for the stuff that's coming in to the creek down there where you're talking about, or at the back?
The owner of the Lucky Strike mine is here with us today. The owner of the Lucky Strike mine is here with us today. So if she,
I don't know who think the mother road is ever been found.
Where was land would it be on?
But there's 33 gold band basketballs in 4-mile lanes there. And, I mean, there's honey holes all along that little stretch. It's just being able to find the right spot. That takes prospecting.
What's the name of that creek?
Second part.
The second part.
I do know that people have said since Hurricane Helene came through that the Lucky Strike among the majority of the campgrounds in McDowell County was flooded, and it actually pulled some of the gold up. I hear quite a bit about flood gold. So
Miners live for the like a big rain. You need to wash yourself a little bit. You have to wash yourself. Really go into it.
land back then would have been, how much of it would have been mined that by, say, did somebody, like a wealthy investor come in and kind of take over the property, did they buy folks out, or was it still kind of locally owned folks that were mining this property?
There was General Hubbard from New York came down. He was there was a few different mining companies back then. He was one of them. There was a Main Mountain Mining Company was one of them. So the Joseph McDowell was also one of the owners. And they would send their workers down there. They would have contracts with the mining companies. So the majority of the miners was not the people that were getting rich. So the actual, we will never know the full amount that has been pulled out of North Carolina, because sometimes the miner met his quota for the day. He could take and slip it in his pocket. I don't know if anyone knows why Polly Spout is named Polly Spout. That's the road that the North Carolina Gold Foundation is on. She ran a certain kind of establishment, and so who's to say that those miners didn't pay for the services in gold? You know, we'll never know. And of course, if you had found, you know, an awesome pocket of gold on your land, are you really going to go out and advertise it? I mean, the Reeds did, thankfully, but, you know, not everyone would, so we won't ever actually know. It's estimated that there was over $75 million pulled out of North Carolina up until 1950, but I would say that's much higher.
Am I correct in saying that there is a tunnel down there that's a one-lane tunnel? Does that have anything to do with the gold or the mining or anything with the gold operation?
So the railroad is over that tunnel. The railroad also borders the North Carolina Gold Foundation land. And the railroad company came through in the early 1900s. I'm not entirely sure when that tunnel was dug. Leah doesn't know either.
I know they went through here in 1905. I did my paper on the Clinchfield Railroad. That used to be my bus route
Yeah.
through the tunnel.
Yeah. It floods. It also floods quite often. But it actually.
Yes, thank you.
As far as it doesn't have anything to do with the gold, I would say probably not. The railroad, you know, that brought some people here, but it also took people away. So in the early 1900s, when the railroad was coming through here, they were paying higher wages than the mining company did. So that's also what contributed to the return of the gold rush in the early 1900s only being for a couple of years, was the railroad company took the workers. And it was also terrible conditions. I mean, you hear coal miners all the time. You know, they got sick. Being 117 feet deep into the earth is not natural. It's not good for you. So we lost a lot to the conditions as well.
So, Bank of America, NCMB, they had the largest collection of baker coins. So does Bank of America still have those, or do you know what happened to those?
I do not actually know, but I have a Beckler coin, right? And the McCormicks have their own little mint. This one was minted in 2017. Main Mountain, North Carolina gold. Lucky strike. You guys can do that as well. And then here is something. This is a pan. So they kind of used what they had at the time, but also this pan Has anyone ever gold painted before? Okay. So you know what the ribbons are for, it's to keep the gold from going out your paint. You put it in there and you shake it really, really hard. Because gold is 19 times heavier than, water and the other stuff. So you shake it really hard and then you there's a couple different techniques. You can go like this, or you can go like this. I always think of it like the beach, the waves coming in, going out, you know, how it washes some of the layers off. Bring some in, but it washes it out. And then you get down, and if you have black sand, it's a pretty good indicator that you are near some gold. When you go to the beach, I actually got to go to the beach in early August, and there was black sand on the beach. I was like, man, we should have brought paint. But that sand is from the Appalachian Mountains. The rains and stuff wash it down to the coast. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you guys for having me here tonight. It's been a pleasure, and I would absolutely love to give you a tour of the North Carolina Gold Foundation grounds, Monday through Friday, and then you could also just go visit the park and just take a little lunch and enjoy. There's something very, very peaceful about that property. So.
Thank you once again, Brooke, for coming out here, and I appreciate y'all coming out with us tonight, and look for us next first Thursday, November 6th, I believe, and we'll be bumping our time up to 6 p.m., but the location will still be here. Thank you.